with a new regime and a new scheme coming to the Minnesota Vikings, there's a handful of players who may be changing position in terms of the technique of their spot. Maybe they're going from a hand in the dirt defensive end to a stand-up outside linebacker. Woo! Good times, and we want to go through a list of them. Now, we'll go through the offensive guys first. I mean, they're all offensive line. It's not like Irv Smith is going to become a running back. And then we'll break down what's going on in defense. We have a graphic for infotainment, etc. So offensive line-wise, Blake Brandel, who really showed up and showed out last year as a 6th offensive lineman in heavy packages. And when they had injuries at right guard to Oli Udoh, they even practiced Blake Brandel a little bit at guard. Now, I would prefer if guys like Wyatt Davis or Kyle Hinton or rookies TBD got a shot inside before Blake Brandel. But if Brandel is one of your best 5 offensive linemen, it makes sense to get him out there. And if he does have some experience inside in terms of practice last year, even though he is a true blue left tackle coming out of Oregon State a couple years ago, they got to consider it. Even though it would mean that the Vikings starting 5 offensive linemen would have 4 former tackles. So you got Darrisaw and O'Neal on the outside, and then you got Ezra and Brandel, 2 former tackles on the inside. But Wyatt Davis, no matter what, who they did work at center at times in preseason and training camp last year, and I think that he would have the first bite at the apple in terms of being a starting right guard. But say something weird happens. Say they do say they do sign Brandon Scherff in free agency for all the money. Basically all the money. And Scherff doesn't have center flexibility like a James Daniels or an Austin Corbett. So he's going to be a right guard. And then where do you put Wyatt Davis? Do you put him at the pivot? Sure. Kyle Hinton, our guy, the pride of Washburn, 7th round pick from a couple years ago, hasn't gotten the time of day yet. And even though they kicked him inside, maybe they should keep kicking him inside even further at center, because you want to get your best 5 on the field. Maybe Kyle Hinton and Wyatt Davis are going to be part of that, as well as Blake Brandel. So defensively, this is where the biggest changes are going to come in. And for a long time, the Vikings have run a 4-3 under Mike Zimmer for the last 8 years, and usually a 4-3 under. And now with Ed Donatel and Mike Pettin and Chris Rumpf, there's going to be some changes. Also with Mike Smith, the outside linebacker / pass rush specialist, it's clear sign that the Vikings are moving to an odd front, whether that be a 3-4 or a 3-man front in nickel. But yeah, so getting into some of the technical jargon. Production value. So this is the basic rudimentary, like 4th grade level interpretation of a 4-3 versus a 3-4. There's many variations, but this is the bare bones that we want to go through. So you're looking at the Vikings old school defense. So you had the nose tackle working as a 1 tech, a 0 tech down here on the 3-4. You got the 3 tech blowing up that B gap. So here's what happens, where when you're going on numbering on offensive side of the ball, you go with numbers. So even is to the right. So this is the 2-hole, 4-hole, 6-hole, 8-hole, etc. And then you have 1, 3, 5, etc. And then for defense, it goes by letters. So you got the A gaps on both sides, you got the B gaps, you got the C gaps, etc. Doesn't really matter. Whatever. Right defensive end would be, so when the Vikings defense is at full strength, right defensive end would have been DJ Wanham, Everson Griffin, 3-tech Diesel Dalvin Thompson, nose tech Michael Pierce, left defensive end Danielle Hunter. And Danielle Hunter gets so much love because he got all of those sacks playing on the strong side, the close side of the field, where he's fighting through mammoth right tackles, sometimes a fullback, usually a tight end, and he's still doing work. And most of the quarterbacks are right-handed, so the quarterback can see him. It's just, that's why you don't get rid of Danielle, man. That's right. Middle linebacker, so you got the Mike, Eric Kendrick, strong side linebacker, Anthony Barr. A weak side, I guess it'd be Nick Candlelight Vigil last season. Now, shifting to a 3-4. And again, there's going to be many variants of this, and this is the bare bones, whatever. And it's much more likely that the Vikings will play a lot of 3-3-5 nickel, but we'll get into that when it's important. So nose tackle, a head up. And now usually a 3-4 nose tackle will play 0 tech, so completely straight up in the grill of a center. So think about Garrett Bradbury, Akeem Hicks, or Garrett Bradbury, Kenny Clark. Just good times, man. 5 techs are going to be lined up more head up on the tackles. And what's really big about the nose tackle and 5 techs is that they need the 2 gap. So the nose tackle needs to take care of both of the A gaps. 5 techs need to control both sides of the tackles to allow the linebackers to fly around and make plays, even more so than in a 4-3. And then you have your 2 inside linebackers. Now, Sometimes they're called both Mike. Sometimes it's a Mike and a Jack, etc. And then you have your weak side and strong side linebackers. Now, this is much different than the roles in terms of the 4-3 outside linebackers. So think, outside linebackers in a 3-4. Think T.J. Watt. Think Von Miller. Think the overrated Khalil Mack. Think Rashawn Gary, etc. It's quite a step down to Rashawn Gary, even though he did well last year under Mike Smith, etc. So those are the positions that we're talking about. Anyways, back to the list. So Danielle Hunter, Janarius Robinson, DJ Wonnum. I think all three of them have the skill set and agility to shift from a 4-3 defensive end to a stand-up outside linebacker. Now, Danielle, even though back at LSU, back in the day, he played a lot of 5-tech. Like, he didn't play a lot of stand-up outside linebacker. But what I think that they could do is basically just turn him into a stand-up outside linebacker in terms of basically a fourth. He's the fourth lineman, except he's standing up. He's standing up over the tight end, and he's familiar with that side of the field. I think Danielle could certainly get that done. And with Wonnum and Janarius Robinson, they both have experience as a stand-up outside linebacker. Janarius Robinson at Florida State, because they went through several different iterations of a defensive scheme. So he was up, down, up, down, up, down. He's got great agility. He can cover. He can do things, as well as DJ Wonnum can be that stand-up outside linebacker as well. At South Carolina, he vacillated back and forth. Now, we didn't list Anthony Barr, mainly because we forgot, but Anthony Barr would be a candidate as well to shift from that strong side 4-3 outside linebacker to a strong side 3-4, or even the weak side 3-4, where a lot of the nice that he got done at UCLA was rushing as a stand-up linebacker. And it's really unfortunate over the last 8 years we haven't seen that. Kind of sucks, but again, what can you do? And then get into the next strata. So the other handful of 4-3 defensive ends, traditional guys, left or right side, hand in the dirt, that could shift inside is Patrick Jones, Kenny Willekes, as well as Sheldon Richardson. So three guys that have different agility levels, different size. I mean, they're just built different than the other three that we talked about, where they do have a little bit more girth to be able to kick inside. I would also put James Lynch in that. Well, we'll talk about James Lynch in a sec. So those guys going from those right defensive end spots inside to 5-techs. Now, it's not as glamorous, but think of like the Cameron Haywards of the world, who's one of the best 5-techs in the league, running that 3-4 defensive end, running interference for TJ Watt, etc. And you got to be man-sized in there. Like, a lot of defensive ends around the league, like, you can be, 250 if you're a 4-3 defensive end. But if you're a 3-4 defensive end, you got to roll 270 if you're an outs man, because you got to be able to stand up, got to be able to hold up against a lot of pressure, as well as you have to be able to two-gap. So you have to be able to get your mitts on that tackle, be able to direct them either way. So there you go. And I think that Kenny Willekes and Patrick Jones, they certainly both have that size. Sheldon Richardson, who we've talked about at length, when he first came into the league, he was a 5-tech. And in 2014, when he made the Pro Bowl, he was playing that 5-tech spot with the Jets. So I would love to have Richardson back. And then you have Diesel Dalvin Thompson, jumping James Lynch, as well as Armand for Watts. So all of their roles are different, where Diesel Dalvin, even though he's played nose tackle, he's played 3-tech and 5-tech with the Giants, he primarily played 3-tech and then didn't really shift over the nose tackle when Pierce was dinged up, but he was fine in that 3-tech spot, a little bit larger, a little bit less of that penetrating 3-tech that you're thinking about. Think about John Randall, think about Aaron Donald, think about Geno Atkins, etc. But I think that Diesel Dalvin, if they're going to keep Michael Pierce at nose, they could certainly kick Diesel to one of the 5-tech spots, and he for damn sure has that size that you want and need. I would even put him on the strong side to be able to take on 3 bodies at a time. And then James Lynch, who played a lot of 5-tech at Baylor, where we said that James Lynch, the problem with him is that he was a bit of a tweener. Like, he didn't have the length or the quickness to really be a 4-3 outside defensive end, or necessarily that girth or size to kick in a nose tackle. Now, he found a niche last year as a pass rushing nose tackle, did some good things, but I actually think 5-tech would be the perfect position for him. So I think that the new defense coming in under Ed Donatel is really fortuitous for James Lynch. And then Armand for Watts. So he was a nose tackle in the 4-3. I think that he also could kick to one of these 5-tech spots. And also, like, these positions aren't all set in stone. Like, all these guys will do a little bit of everything, and that's what's great, is that you have so many dudes who have that skill set, who can get after the quarterback, and you're going to be using them in a variety of ways, which, maybe they weren't doing that under the previous defensive regime, etc. And then 2 at the end. So this is more So Harrison Smith, even though he's been more of a hybrid safety throughout his entire career, he plays single high, he plays two deep, he plays down in the box where he does some phenomenal things. But I think as he gets older, father time catches up to everyone, and his range certainly isn't what it used to be. I think you could see him playing more and more closer to the line of scrimmage, where he still has a lot of value with his intelligence, his leadership, as well as his ability to make tackles. So I think that Harrison could see less time as single high as Cameron Bynum continues to rise up. Maybe they resign Xavier Woods, who really knows, and then basically becomes more of a full-time strong safety in the box, or even like a third linebacker if the Vikings are in a 3-3-5 or a 3-2-6 whatever type defense. And then Cameron Bynum, who played great last year in a couple of starts filling in for Harrison Smith, and I think that especially if the Vikings do re-sign Xavier Woods, which I think could be a possibility since he played really solid last year. But Cameron Bynum, remember, he was a college cornerback, and he played outside and in the slot at Cal. And the Vikings, outside of signing Bryce Callahan, which makes a lot of sense, him coming over, a lot of experience with Donatel, and potentially finding a cornerback in the draft, maybe they use Cameron Bynum as sort of a honey badger type role, where throughout his career, Tyrann Mathieu, he's been the starting safety in base, but occasionally they'll kick him into the slot when they bring in that extra defender, whether it be a third safety and then they kick Cameron Bynum inside, or whether they bring in a third quarterback, whatever. But I think that this defense, they have so many players that can do multiple things, and Cameron Bynum is another one of those guys. He can play single high safety. I think that's his best asset. He can play even. He can play in the slot. He can do a lot of things, and I think that Fangio and this defense, they have a lot of opportunities to really max out and utilize the skill set of a lot of these dudes. Hell, I can't wait to see Patrick Jones get the time of day. I can't wait to see Janarius Robinson actually getting on the field. I want to keep Danielle Hunter. I want to see him hunt from a standing position on third and long, just getting after that quarterback's ass, man. So it's a very exciting time to be a Viking fan, and there's going to be some changes. Changes. But let us know your thoughts on our thoughts. A lot of babbling, a lot of jargon. Which Vikings could switch positions? Let us know in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work? Put a little something in the Venmo. But until next time, Skol, production value.